You've survived all the way until day 5 of this course where you are learning how to become a screenwriter in just 10 days. So first off, let's just do a quick recap of everything that we've done so far. On day 1, we came up with an idea. On day 2, we sort of figured out the theme of that idea as well as worked out a few details for our protagonist. On day 3, we learned about story structure and how that works with our particular idea. On day number 4, we went a bit further into character development. We found out a bit more about our protagonist, our antagonist, as well as the side characters. So the goal for today is to create an outline, a step-by-step roadmap for this film. Before I go any further, there's 2 things that people will often get confused with each other, and that is the outline and the synopsis. A synopsis is more like a bit more of a theatrical telling of what the film is about, and that's usually something you would use for marketing purposes to get someone excited to go see the movie so that you have a general summary of what the film is about. In this instance, the thing that we are going to be working on today is the outline. That is more of a play-by-play of what happens through the film. And this is something that you would use for planning purposes, of course, but it also might be something that you would show to someone during a pitch, or if you want them to finance the film so that they have a clear idea of what it is that you're trying to film. So the first thing that we're going to do in working out our outline is figuring out the main big story beats. And the great thing is that we have already done this. We've done this in one of the previous videos where we figured out the status quo, the inciting incident, the turning points, the midpoints, the climax, etc. So now what I would like you to do is pause this video for as long as you need to, but try not to make it too long because we're not going for perfection, we just need something written down. I want you to get each of those main things, the status quo, inciting incident, etc., 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 and I want you to write them all together as though it's one paragraph. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go into each of those things and you're going to see if you can expand it a little bit, see if you can add a little bit more detail, of maybe the characters that are involved, where it is, if that's important. And then the next step that we're going to do is we're going to look at each of those moments and we're going to try to figure out how they get from one to the other. So if you have your status quo and we're showing the world as it is, then we're going to say, okay, but how do we get to the point where the inciting incident is introduced? How does it then get to the point where the first turning point? And we're just going to try to fill in the gaps in between, So is it easy for them to go from one to the other, or are there a few scenes in between that help us get there? That is what I would like you to do right now. I want you to go through all of those different story beats that you have, put them in a paragraph and flesh it out. And if you do that, then you actually have most of your outline there and you're very close to finished. Once again, I'm just going to give you some kind of face for 5 seconds and I'm going to get you to pause it for as long as you need to, and then when you're done, come back and let's continue. Let's do like a If you had a bit of trouble and you're not quite sure how some of them link together, then that is completely fine. It might just mean you need to spend a little bit more time, maybe go back, work out your story a bit. We're going to go through each of the different scenes that you have for your film. And if there are still some scenes that are missing, that's totally fine. If we do this next part, it might help you figure out what those are. For each individual scene, we are going to start asking some questions. And one way that I like to do this, and you don't have to do it this way, you can just type it on a Word doc or on your phone or whatever you want to do, but I like to actually get palm cards. I forget what you call them, but just these individual little pieces of paper, and I will use one of these for each scene of the film. So when you're looking at each of your scenes, there's a few questions that I want you to ask. So firstly, what is the purpose of the scene? The next one is, how does the scene change? Because every scene needs to have some kind of change, otherwise nothing is really developing and therefore the scene might not actually be needed. And then the third question is, how does that scene move the story forward? Now you might have answered that one during the second question about change, but I'm going to put that in there just in case, because sometimes there might be something in the scene that changes, but there might be another element or another detail that is actually responsible for moving the story forward. So perhaps the change happens, and as a result of that, somebody is angry and does something else. Then you can also ask a few other questions that might help you develop the scene a bit further. One of those is, whose scene is it? So there's always one character who is the main character in that particular scene, and it's not always the protagonist. Whose scene is it? What does the character want? What is in their way? And is there a way to include subtext? If you're not quite sure what subtext is, then don't worry, I'll go into that in a future video. For now, just mainly focus on those 3 questions, and if you can answer those other 3, then that is just a bonus. Just remember that since we are doing a short film, you should only have fewer scenes. So as you are going through the outline, that's one of the important things about this process, is we're going to look at all the scenes, and it's a chance for us to identify whether or not there might be too much going on and see if we can find any ways to reduce it. You know, are there any moments of that story that we can take out while still maintaining the important elements? And a lot of these things are skills that you would learn over time doing a number of projects. So don't worry if it feels a bit overwhelming or maybe some of these things don't make sense. If you start just trying to use them in your writing, then over time it will make sense and your writing will become better because of it. Use these things, use those main story points and all of these ways to flesh out your scenes, and just using dot points, I want you to list them all out together, and that is the skeleton of your outline. The second part of this is learning more about cause and effect, and I did speak a little bit about this in a previous video, and I think there's a video by the guys who created South Park that go into this really well, and they explain it so simply. Each moment in your film is caused because of whatever came before it. Something happens in your film, therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this thing happens. A mistake that a lot of writers will make is they'll write a scene, and then they'll write another scene, and then this scene happens, and then this scene happens, and then this scene happens. But in order to really kind of unlock the potential of screenwriting, there needs to be a lot of cause and effect. There needs to be action and reaction. Something happens, and then because of that, this thing happens. But then this thing happens, and because of that, this next thing happens. And so then each part of your story naturally leads into the next. So when we are doing all of this planning, it's important to know that when you actually get to the point when you are writing your story, you're going to learn more about it, and you're going to learn a bit more about which direction it will naturally go to. Because it's a short film, if there are any scenes that don't connect and they aren't there because of something else, then you might potentially be wasting time having that scene in there. So you could explore the idea of taking that scene out and then seeing if your story still makes sense. Or perhaps that scene just needs to be changed in some way so it actually fits more of that cause and effect technique. So now what you're going to do is take another bit of time, pause the video again, and you're going to go to that outline. You're going to go to that list of scenes that you have, and you're going to see if you can put therefore and but between them. You're going to see if there is something between each of them connecting to the next. You're going to try to identify what happens in your scene that then connects it to the next one. As I mentioned, because this is a short film, it is really important that you go through it and you cut anything that isn't needed. When I'm writing a story, the first draft of it will often be a lot longer than what it should be. All the characters' dialogue will be these paragraphs and sometimes monologues of talking. But then it's through refining that I realized that the best way to go about it is to simplify things, cut out any of the gunk, and then you're left with the pure essentials of the story. Therefore, your audience isn't going to get confused. It's going to maintain their attention. They're actually going to be excited to watch it, and they're going to survive all the way until the end. So every scene in a short film needs to earn its place. It's a short film. There isn't very much time, which means the scenes that are in there are taking up very valuable real estate. So make sure they count. So you can cut scenes all together, you can merge scenes together, and beware of putting in any scenes to your script where the only purpose of that is to set up something later. You know, something needs to happen in that scene that then also sets up something later. You can also look at your outline now and identify any issues with pacing. So for example, you don't want to have lots of action-packed scenes back to back. If you have something that's, high adrenaline or dramatic or stressful, then following that, you need to have more of a quiet moment where the characters can really come to terms with what it is that they've been through. That's when you have those natural dips in the story structure arc. Something exciting will happen, then they spend a bit of time developing and learning from it, and then something else happens, and then they learn from it, and something else happens, and then they learn from it. You can just do the easy litmus test. So go through your scenes, remove a scene, and if the story is still the same, then cut it, because it clearly isn't needed. Let's wrap up before we go on to the next day. Let's do a quick summary of what it is that we've covered here. We are going to use everything that you've written already, and we're going to create an outline. And maybe you've already done it while watching this video, in which case, great. Then you're going to go through each of those different scenes that are building that outline, and you're going to see if there is natural cause and effect. Your homework for today. The first part of the homework, of course, is to finish that outline. The next thing you're going to do is, since we've actually constructed the outline based on scenes, we can actually look at those individual scenes and start actually working on our screenplay formatting and get a little bit ahead that way. So now we are going to label each scene in your outline with a heading. I don't want you to ruin your outline. I want you to copy and paste everything that you have in your outline to a second one, and now we're going to split that into scenes, and we're going to get ahead on our script formatting section of this course. So with each of those different scenes that you've used to build your outline, I'm going to get you to write a heading, and that is going to include either int or ext, which means interior or exterior, or other words, inside or outside. Then you're going to write a couple of words for the place, basement, or bus, or park, or wherever it is that this thing happens. Interior, basement. And then you're going to write a third thing, which is the time of day. Keep it simple for now, and you could just say day, you could say night, you could say sunset, sunrise. This one will be interior, basement, day. So you're going to go through each of your scenes, and you're going to write each of these three things. And then one final thing is that each scene in your film will have a natural beginning, middle, and end. So the scene will start one way, something will happen that causes a change, and the scene will finish differently to how it started. This is the homework for today, and hopefully because of all the work that you've done beforehand, it's nice and easy. Good luck with it, and I will see you tomorrow for day 6, where we start learning more about how to actually format a screenplay.